So, Joe, this is the second of our month-long series on movies related to unions. Do you know when the first union started in America?
Is that when Adam and Eve met?
I'm talking about labor unions, not marriage unions, and also the Garden of Eden was not in America. I'm talking about something that actually exists, not something made up from a silly book with talking snakes and women turning into salt.
If you could be a salt, what type of salt would you be?
An amphetamine salt, but let's leave those types of questions for the post-show.
So when did the first union start?
It started in 1794. The first labor union in America was the Federal Society of Journeymen Cordwainers.
Cordwainers?
I know, it sounds like an insult, right? They were leather workers and cobblers.
Maybe you should explain what a labor union is.
Okay. Labor unions are organizations that help workers get better working conditions and higher wages. They are funded through dues paid by members. They collectively bargain with the bosses on behalf of the workers and will strike or stop working if disputes cannot be resolved. Labor protests have given us 8-hour workdays, weekends, health benefits, and ended child labor. They also forced employers to aid workers injured on the job and made sure people had retirement benefits. In fact, even when your job doesn't have a union, employers will give workers those benefits to avoid a labor uprising.
That's great. And labor unions welcomed all workers, right? Like immigrants and women and blacks.
Eventually.
Eventually. Okay, well, that's enough labor facts now. Let's get on with the show. Welcome to Does This Still Work? The podcast looks at always and asks, does this still work? I'm Joe Dixon.
And I'm George Romacka. And today we're discussing Blue Collar from 1978 and some historical context. First, podcasty stuff. This is the second film in our patron-inspired Union series, for which we thank our patron, Word of the Broad.
Word of the Broad, thank you!
Yep. You can reach us at dtswpod@gmail.com, on Facebook, Letterboxd, and on our YouTube channel. Joe is on Blue Sky at joedixon.bsky.social. Please tell your friends about us, even the ones who will attack a vending machine with a forklift given enough provocation, and leave 5-star ratings everywhere. You can pick what we watch and get extra per episode content by funding us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/dtswpod. Now, Joe, take us back to 1978.
So what was going on with labor back in 1978? I got this summary from the U.S. Department of Labor titled Analysis of Work Stoppages, 1978. Link, just like all the sources I'm going to use, can be found in the show notes. Quoting, a relatively light bargaining schedule in 1978, fewer mid-contract disputes, and persistent unemployment and construction resulted in a reduction over previous years and most strike measures. The number of strikes beginning in the year and workers involved were at their lowest since 1965, while the proportion of employed workers on strike was lowest since 1963. However, total idleness was high because of the continuation of the 1977 coal strike into 1978. Both the mean and median duration of strikes ending in 1978 were the longest on record, reflecting the impact of the coal strike and the decline in the incidence of disputes lasting only 1 to 3 days. Workers struck most frequently over economic matters raised during contract renegotiations. They were far less likely to walk out than the term of agreement than in previous years. End quote. That coal strike I read about occurred between the United Mine Workers of America and various coal mining companies. The strike lasted 100 days but ended with a new contract that improved miners' wages and benefits. So that's good. Here is a piece from the Times-Herald covering one aspect of the strike. Headline, George.
Edison readies blackout plan.
The Edison here is Detroit Edison, the independently operated energy company that kept the lights on. Executives from the company were threatening that residential customers would face twice daily blackouts lasting up to 2 hours each for a daily total of 4 hours. Meanwhile, commercial customers would face orders to reduce electrical use by up to 30%. Failure to comply get those businesses hit with heavy fines. Now, I don't know if they ever actually did that, but George, am I crazy to think that a company that threatens that sort of thing is just a way to make the customers or the regular citizens scared and hate the union?
Yeah, that's exactly what that would be.
Moving on, as this movie demonstrates, just because a union is a good idea, that doesn't mean its leadership is up to the task. Such was the case with the Wildcat Strike that hit Washington, D.C.'s transit system. Led by young and mostly black employees without the approval of union bosses, this uprising ground the metro to a halt for a week, but led to better wages and benefits. This Wildcat Strike also affected transit lines in Buffalo, New York. And that same year, some postal workers went on strike after finding their new union-approved contract to be a sellout, in their opinion anyway. By the way, if you're curious, they're called Wildcat Strikes because wildcats are thought to be unpredictable and not easy to control. Now, George, you used to be a union man. Did you ever engage in a Wildcat Strike or know people who did?
I never got to engage in a strike action. The one time that we could have, we were locked out before we could. So the choice to strike was taken away from us and we were prevented from going back to work.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Well, now, George, tell us about Blue Collar.
Okay. This was written and directed by Paul Schrader. This was his directorial debut. His writing credits for the show include Raging Bull and The Last Temptation of Christ.
Yes, and I saw his work in First Reformed.
And this was also written by Leonard Schrader and Sidney A. Glass, both of whom Joe knows from Roots, The Next Generation.
I assume Leonard Schrader and Paul Schrader are related, right?
Yeah, sure.
I didn't check, but I'm looking at these two names like,
Maybe they're just joined at the hip.
Right.
Blurbs. IMDb says, when 3 workers try to steal from the local union, they instead discover corruption and decide to use this information for blackmail. So when 3 workers try to commit crimes, they discover crimes and decide to do more crimes with it.
Indeed.
Amazon says, 3 down-on-their-luck auto workers team up to rob their union's safe, but get in too deep when they discover evidence of corruption in this underrated drama featuring a stellar performance by Richard Pryor. I am,
Yes? Come on, say it.
Richard Pryor did fine in this, but I think Yaphet Kotto did a better job acting in this.
Yeah, but to be fair, people expect Yaphet Kotto to be a good actor. Richard Pryor. No, I'm not kidding. I
know you're not. That's why it's funny. Okay. YouTube says, Richard Pryor, Harvey Keitel, and Yaphet Kotto star in the powerful, critically acclaimed drama Blue Collar. 3 auto assembly line workers, fed up with the union brass and tired of scraping by, hatch a plan to rob a safe at union headquarters. Disappointed with their measly bounty, they realize they've made off with something much more valuable than cash. Their unexpected swipe suddenly envelops the 3 auto workers in a desperate fight against corruption and organized crime. Because, as we mentioned, if you're going to fight corruption, what do you fight it with, Joe?
More corruption?
Yeah.
Hey, quick question. This is good old Harvey Keitel.
Hey, we didn't see his penis in this one.
But how much of his body do we need to see in his movies? He's like, we get to see him in his underwear in this thing, and the other movies we see his ding dong. Man likes to get naked on film.
Yes, he does. We open to scenes of a Detroit auto factory in the 70s, backed by Captain Beefheart singing Jack Nishi's Hard Workin' Man. Dogshit Miller, and this is how he is credited, the supervisor walks the floor, snapping at the workers to work faster.
I'm a supervisor. Don't even call me Dogshit Dixon.
Yep.
It's alliterative.
It is. It would be alliterative. Nobody calls me Dogshit Romaka, at least not to my face.
Oh, damn, they do it to his face, don't they? I just realized, yeah. I would say, yeah, it's normally you don't do it to your face, but no, in this movie they do.
They do.
Straight up.
Dogshit Miller is played by Boris Silver, and I've seen him in Escape from New York. He makes snide remarks to some, like one of our protagonists, Zeke, who is installing a windshield.
Zeke is played by the one, the only, the great Richard Pryor. And I've seen Richard Pryor in Lost Highway, See No Evil, Hear No Evil, JoJo Dancer, Your Life is Calling, Stir Crazy, The Muppet Movie, California Suite, The Wiz, Which Way Is Up, Silver Streak, Uptown Saturday Night, Lady Sings the Blues, Richard Pryor live in concert, Richard Pryor live on the Sunset Strip, Richard Pryor Here and Now, Pryor's Place, that was a TV show, kids show he did for a year, and The Richard Pryor Show, a TV show he did that was very controversial at the time for some reason because he was Richard Pryor. They give the man a TV show and then freak out about his... The minds of TV executives is just astonishing. Can you guess, in The Richard Pryor Show, what cast member would go on to be a huge star? A guy whose work you love very much.
George Carlin?
Next, try another one. You love his stuff. We've seen a bunch of his movies.
Oh, Robin Williams.
Robin Williams is in that, yeah.
Nifty. That's the second time in 2 days I guessed something.
Is it?
I was hanging out with my buddy Calvin. He was doing a DJ gig in Brooklyn. And there was a song playing. And he's like, George, can you guess who wrote this song? And I'm listening to it. And he even playing like hip hop and songs that I just never heard before. And I'm like, New music. I'm loving it. But I'm like, was it Prince? He's like, yeah, Prince wrote this song. I'm like, huh, yeah, it sounded like Prince wrote that song. Go figure.
Very good.
So I've seen Richard Pryor in Superman 3, the one that gave us the shave off the last half cent of everything and have it deposited into account that has given us the plot of a bunch of other movies, Brewster's Millions, and Moving. Funnily enough, Joe has seen almost everything he's done, except the things I've seen.
That is ironic. We've had that happen plenty of times, though.
Mm-hmm. Smokey and Jerry, our other two protagonists, are operating an impact wrench and welding, respectively.
Smokey's played by Yaphet Kotto, who we know for the show from Alien. And I've seen him in Nothing But a Man, The Thomas Crown Affair, across 110th Street.
Yep.
Live and Let Die. Friday Foster, a movie that's come up a lot lately, I've noticed. Mm-hmm. And Homicide: Life on the Street, the TV show.
That's because we keep watching movies with black people in them, Joe.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yep. Jerry is played by DTSW alum Harvey Keitel, who we've seen in Taxi Driver, Apocalypse Now, The Last Temptation of Christ, Thelma and Louise, Bad Lieutenant, and Pulp Fiction, all for the podcast. We've both seen him in Inglourious Bastards.
And I've seen him in Mother Judges Speed.
And I've seen in Rising Sun, From Dusk Till Dawn, U-571, Little Nicky, National Treasure, Isle of Dogs, and Sister Act. Miller chastises Jerry for putting in eye drops on company time. Smokey mutters how the workers really feel.
Ugly, you stink. Everything about you is ugly. Your mama's ugly. Your father's ugly. The whole family's ugly. Garlic breath. Ugly, big gut motherfucker.
He's ugly.
In a big gut. Mm-hmm. Garlic breath, I hear.
Mm-hmm. Another worker, Jenkins, takes a quick break to try getting an ice-cold soda from a vending machine. It steals his money for the umpteenth time, and Miller tells him to get back to work and take his complaints to the union.
Jenkins is played by George Mamoli, and we've both seen this guy in Rocky, and I've seen him in Mean Streets.
At a union meeting, steward Clarence Hill looks for pamphleting volunteers and comes up empty. What he gets is Zeke complaining about his broke, finger-injuring, pen-breaking locker. Zeke says he'll go straight to the union president and threatens to come after Clarence's job as steward.
Clarence Hill is played by Lance Smith, who we know for the show from Network and My Cousin Vinny. Plus, I saw him in the TV miniseries Chiefs, that I've mentioned previously. You legit have been a union person. Did that seem typical when you went to union? Did you go to union meetings?
Once or twice.
Did they look like that? Just sort of like the table set up, a guy just sitting in front?
Our union was way bigger. It was hard to see anything.
So it was like it was in the auditorium or something?
Yeah. Mm. After work at Little Joe's bar, Zeke tells Jerry stories about Smokey's womanizing days and how he ended up in prison, twice. We speed through another workday and then see that day end with the ritual of punching time cards. The workers once again retreat to Little Joe's bar. A newcomer in the bar is John Burroughs, and he is played by Cliff D. Young. We've seen him for the show in The Craft, and I've seen him in Flight of the Navigator and Glory.
And a bit of trivia here, the kid who was the star Flight of the Navigator will go on to be arrested for bank robbery in 2016.
Huh.
I wonder how many of our listeners, or just how many people in general, remember punching in to go to work. I don't think that's not used anywhere anymore, right? I think that's done.
I'm sure it's used somewhere.
Really?
Not any place I've worked, though.
I haven't seen those in years.
John is an FBI agent posing as a researcher for a nearby university. His questions about the union immediately raise suspicions and his cover gets blown. He tries to impress upon the men there that there's corruption in their union, but they don't want to listen. Mostly because they already know that.
Yeah, he's not telling them something they don't know.
At Zeke's place, his wife is watching The Jeffersons. Zeke doesn't like the show and is very vocal about it. His wife, Carolyn Brown, says he should probably just turn it off, but he will never do that because it took 3 years to pay for that TV. Then we see his kids being ungrateful brats with their toys. They get a surprise visit from the IRS because Zeke has been claiming twice as many children as he actually has, and now he owes a bunch of money.
Caroline Brown is played by Chip Fields, and we saw her in Claudine. And do you know there was a time when the IRS actually visited your house?
I'm sure that time still exists.
I guess. You know what it reminded me of? The scene from Claudine, actually, where the welfare worker comes to visit the house.
Yep.
At the same set, I'm like, wow, back in the day, government workers visited your house a lot.
To make ends meet, Jerry works at a local gas station. John Burroughs shows up to get some gas and try and get some dirt on the union from him. Jerry refuses to talk to a government agent. As Jerry tucks into bed, his wife Arlene says that the school nurse thinks their daughter needs braces and that their daughter is going to ask him again tomorrow for the money to get them. Arlene Bartowski is played by Lucy Saroyan.
And I know her from The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, from 1974.
Zeke does in fact go to union headquarters to speak with their union president, Eddie Johnson, also known as Eddie Knuckles, because union bosses need gangster names.
Indeed. That's the way you know they're tough.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Eddie Johnson is played by Harvey, and I saw him in Another Thin Man.
He was not that man.
He was not that man. He was a character in Another Thin Man, but he was not the Thin Man.
Eddie makes a show of listening to his concerns about his locker and fakes a phone call to Clarence Hill about it. He assures Zeke that his concerns will be attended to. On his way out, Zeke sees one of the union office staff take their bicycle out of a big old safe.
Put a pin in that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, interesting. Why do you suppose, since what he's asking for is so minor, why they just don't do it? As opposed to just humoring him, so we'll just come back later to complain?
Because they have to be made to look like complete assholes.
So you're saying this is the script's fault?
Yep.
Okay.
At night, Zeke and Jerry both make excuses to their wives as to why they have to leave in the middle of the night. They go over to Smokey's place, where there are a bunch of women and drugs for a drugs and sex party. They float the idea of robbing the union headquarters and really pulling one over on those bastards.
You know, I'm going to stick this in here because I made a note earlier about this. So there's a whole drug scene here where the guys are all snorting up cocaine and committing acts of adultery. And Richard Pryor, as we all know, was a big cocaine user. Apparently, he would pick cocaine. Well, he was saying in his routine, say he would pick cocaine on his dick. One day, Pam Grier, who was dating, went to the doctors. And the doctor said, you got to stop all this cocaine you're doing because, you know, it's bad for you. It's terrible. She's like, what cocaine? I don't do cocaine. I've never used cocaine in my life.
It wasn't a joke.
It wasn't a joke that Richard was using cocaine on, without telling her, of course, on his penis because he thought it made it harder. And that led to their eventual breakup, which is not unreasonable, I think.
Her position, no, is not unreasonable. So before their next shift, the three amigos once again discuss that safe job. They decide to talk about it later at the bar. Before work starts, Jenkins tries to get another soda from the machine, and it predictably eats his money. So he retrieves a forklift and stabs it to death. He gets removed by security. Jerry finds out at dinner with his family that his daughter tried to make her own braces out of a piece of wire. This shocks him into the reality that he is working 2 jobs to make ends meet, can't pay his bills, and might actually need to get in on this whole union headquarters job. At the bar, the plan starts coming together. Smokey knows a girl who works there who knows the place inside and out. They're expecting to net at least $5,000 or $6,000. They stake out the headquarters to get the movements of the guards. Plan gets more and more complicated as they decide to use Jerry's car, but he needs a new fuel pump, and they need to get some disguises. Zeke gets the disguises from a dollar store toy aisle. Jerry gets and installs his new fuel pump. Smokey gets them knockoff watches on the cheap. At night, they synchronize their knockoff watches and head to Union headquarters. They break in and find the vault unlocked. It's mostly empty. There is a smaller safe in a corner, so they decide to grab that. Their watches don't work, so they've lost track of time, and they get spotted by a security guard. They knock him out and make their escape.
You know, it wasn't until I saw that scene where they come out, the security guard catches them, and they come out with their terrible mask. I mean, just a good job hiding their faces whatsoever. like, these guys killing are amateur criminals, to put it mildly. But when I saw that scene, I was like, wait a minute, I've seen this movie before.
Sometimes it's the little things. Inside the safe, they find about $600. This is far short of what they were hoping for. They also find a ledger that will be important in a little while. The lying rats and union leadership go on TV to say that the robbery lost the union $10,000. At home, Zeke reads that ledger and notices that the union's been making some large cash loans at high interest rates. He supposes that this is illegal. He tells Jerry what he finds while out bowling with their families. Jerry says that they should tell Smokey, so they go to do that. Smokey needs some convincing that this is anything worth thinking about. Jerry sees this as a danger to them personally. He figures if they have the book and they get caught, the union's going to come after them to keep them quiet. Smokey gets the idea to blackmail the union with it.
Which, do you think, is that a good idea or a bad idea?
It's a bad idea.
Okay.
At the plant, we see Dogshit pull Smokey off of what he's doing to go work a different job. This is to show that Smokey is a kind of jack of all trades and can do pretty much anything in the plant, and this will be important later. Dogshit tells Zeke that he's always dragging, which escalates to Zeke nearly clocking him with an impact wrench. He gets pulled into a room with Miller and Clarence Hill and the management superintendent. Hill offers to have Zeke buy Dogshit a bottle of booze, but Zeke isn't having it. The result is that Dogshit buys Zeke the booze, and then they go back to work.
And still, his locker's not fixed.
Yep. At the next union meeting, the union is now saying it was $20,600 that went missing. Eddie Johnson makes sure to tell the union that it was their money that was stolen. After that meeting, Smokey and Jerry find one Charlie T. Hernandez in the back of Smokey's car. Charlie is an enforcer for a local loan shark. Smokey owes that guy some money over a numbers racket. Charlie T. Hernandez is played by Jimmy Martinez, and we've seen him for the show in Blazing Saddles.
Apparently he was a Mexican in that, but I don't have no idea.
Yeah.
It just said he was a Mexican in Blazing Saddles. Okay, whatever you say.
IMDb.
Lord and Masters at IMDb, I'll do whatever you tell me. Yeah, you say he was in that? Sure.
A little while later at the bar, the three meet outside and determine that they really shouldn't be seen together since the security guard did get a look at least their racial makeup. So they part ways.
Okay, I want to ask you about that scene in particular, because nothing they're saying or anything doesn't make any sense. They're right, they would be suspicious. But the way it's shot, they keep looking over, I mean, maybe it's just the paranoia we're supposed to be getting, but they're looking over these other characters, and I kept feeling like they were going to play some part in this, and they don't. They're just characters walking to their cars, leaving at the bar. It just felt like it was supposed to, like something was cut out, that maybe something was supposed to be there that wasn't. Did you get that, or you have no idea what I'm talking about?
No, I think it was shot paranoidly because they're being paranoid.
No, you think that's what, okay,
yeah.
So you think it was intentional. Yeah, okay.
The police are investigating the theft and pick up Mr. Hernandez for questioning. He implicates the three amigos. The police forward this to the union, and the union leadership comes up with its own plan. Smokey sees a couple of union thugs at the bar call Zeke's house to see if he's home. So Smokey calls Caroline there and tells her that Zeke needs her to bring him something at work. He goes to Zeke's house and lies in wait for the thugs to show up and be rather surprised to not find a helpless woman. He beats the daylights out of them with a baseball bat. For intelligence, he gets that they got their orders in a roundabout way from Eddie Knuckles.
Am I wrong? Does Smokey never actually tell Zeke that he did this?
Nope, he never tells Zeke that he did that.
I don't know why. Why did he not tell anybody, actually?
Good question, Joe.
Seems like a good heads up. Hey, dude, these people are just over at your house. You might want to know about this.
Yep.
What? So his wife goes to the plant. She's going to go there. She's like, Zeke, here's this thing. Your friend said you needed this. And he's like, what are you talking about? I didn't need this. So no one follows up.
In my headcanon, Zeke knows well enough to just play along.
Maybe. Yeah, because they do other stuff.
Yeah.
They don't tell their wives, so why not this? Yeah.
Eddie Johnson brings Zeke in for a meeting. He offers him Clarence's job as union steward in exchange for the ledger. Zeke wants assurances that nothing will happen to Smokey or Jerry. Eddie says, absolutely.
Absolutely. You can trust me, buddy.
Yeah, the union is all about protecting their safety. I titled this one, A Killer Paint Job.
Yes, I see that. You're very proud of your titles, aren't you?
Sometimes. Meanwhile, at the factory, Miller pulls Smokey off of whatever he's doing to help with fixing up a paint job on a car. So he goes down to an enclosed spray painting room. While he's working in there, somebody parks a forklift right outside the door. The ventilation in the room shuts off, and we watch for a really, really long time as Smokey tries to turn systems on or stop the paint from spraying. Eventually, he breaks the window in the door, but it's too late. He asphyxiates.
Smokey strikes me as a guy who'll be smart enough to know, well, I should probably break the glass first before I do anything else. That's like the third or fourth thing he tries.
Yep. On an overpass, Zeke gives Eddie what for about having Smokey murdered. Eddie's response is less than wonderful.
I'm going to give you a quick education, son, and you better listen, and you better listen good. When I was your age, there were no blacks working in the auto plants. Blacks, now wait a minute. Blacks got jobs because guys like me knew when to stand up and when to look the other way.
That's a good justification for killing a black man, right, Joe?
Well, this is one of those look the other way moments, that's all. Isn't that what your union rep said to you once?
Not once. Never.
We got all these blacks in here. You got to turn your head sometimes. You know how it is, George.
Jerry asks Arlene to take the kids out of town for a while. Arlene suspects that it has something to do with Smokey's death. So Jerry goes to Zeke and asks what they're going to do about it. Zeke says they're not going to do nothing. He offers Jerry Miller's job as foreman. Jerry turns it down and says he's just getting screwed in this.
What did you think of that whole conversation?
Drawn out.
I thought it was drawn out.
Yeah, like there was a lot of Harvey Keitel doing space work trying to look frustrated. Successfully look frustrated.
It's almost like the script suddenly changed. Richard Pryor character and Yaphet Kotto's characters know that they're black and they know that Harvey Keitel is white. And obviously, it's weird that this is the only time they seem to have that conversation is then on this freaking stoop after the friend is dead.
Yeah.
So you know what? You're white. I'm black. I can't do all these things you can do. Like, which is, I'm saying it's true, but
it's true. But
just
why now?
It's like, yeah, why now? You're just saying this.
How did this friend of yours not know that already? So Jerry goes back to John Burroughs, the FBI guy, who says he can help him take the Union down. Jerry's not happy that he'd be getting, at best, a suspended sentence. Burroughs says he's the only person who can protect Jerry and his family. Now Jerry can't sleep, so he goes back to the bar. He stays there all night until it closes. When he leaves, he's followed by a car with 2 Union thugs. They go on a chase that results in a crash. When he's arrested, he asks for John Burroughs. The next day, Burroughs brings Jerry back to the plant to retrieve his effects. On the way out, him and Zeke get into a shouting match. Jerry uses some racial slurs. The movie ends with a freeze frame of those two going after each other, with Smokey's words from earlier, which will be the end clip of this film, playing over them. The end.
The end. And there's another moment where I found it, the tone suddenly just abruptly changed, because it's weird that Jerry suddenly starts spouting off all these racial slurs all of a sudden. I didn't feel anything that came before of the character. He suddenly become this, what, I'm now working with the feds and I'm turning on the union and now I'm a racist?
It was abrupt, yes.
We've seen movies where we know if you get thrown downstairs, you're cured of being a racist. And if you're raped in the shower, you're cured of being a racist. But so if joining a union makes you a racist or something?
It's not joining the union that makes you a racist. It's having that conversation on the stoop, where your black friend, who you've known has been black this whole time, points out that he's black and that kind of disadvantages him in ways. That's what makes you a racist.
That, and this also is another scene that, oh, I have seen this movie before. In fact, while I was watching the film, my sister called me, and we were talking about, because, folks, I had surgery coming up. This is post-surgery voice, but I had a surgery before this. And so that's what we were talking about. And she asked me what I was doing. I said, well, I'm watching Blue Collar. She said, oh, I saw that. That's with Richard Pryor. And I was like, oh, yeah. So I was like, wow, I didn't realize my sister had seen this. I said, why didn't you take me? I was old enough to go see a movie. She said, I'm really taking you to you're a brat. I take you out to the movies. I used to call her a witch all the time, so I can understand why that might not have endeared me to her.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't.
Anyway, George, does this film still work?
Yeah, I think it does. There's nothing in it that makes it not work. The racism in it is kind of, that's how racism is. In a lot of ways, and it's the way it's wielded by white people to shut black people up. Like that, it's a good portrait of it. And I don't think it's an unfair portrait of how unions work a lot of the time, especially in the 70s.
Yeah, I think it works as well. I wrote in one of our little summaries that this was a forgotten film. I actually don't know how many people forgot, but I don't feel it's a film most folks know about. And I think they should. It's a really good picture. I do think the tonal change is still a little odd to me. I wish they had hinted more at Keitel's character having these feelings in him. Because it just seems for me to become out of nowhere. And you're right, as a friend, race would have been mentioned a few times before this moment. And at the end, again, he's suddenly inward this and inward that. Like, wow. That came off as like, where the hell did that come from, dude? I know you're pissed, but what the hell? Mm-hmm. It would have been better if it was something he'd said before, like you used to do it. He would say something he'd said before.
I knew that was going to... It's not wrong. Yeah, you'd think he started with the racism, and then friend was like, hey, you should stop racisming in front of me, the black friend that you want to have. And he'd have been like, oh, shit, yeah, duh.
And then this thing came out of him or something. It just would have made more sense if something was more developed, that's all. I just thought it was too abrupt. But all the performances are very good. It's a very well-written movie. Yeah, and, look, George and I are both pro-union, but let's be realistic. Unions aren't necessarily perfect. You got to be careful. The concept of unions are good. The people running unions aren't always.
Right. Except police unions. Those are fucking garbage and can die in a fire.
Yeah, the people running them, the people in them, all of them are bad. They're all bastards. Yeah. All right, George, what's up next?
Next week is our third movie in our union series, and we'll be talking about Norma Ray from 1979.
Norma Ray?
Mm-hmm.
Union! So I guess that's it for this episode. I'm Joe Dixon. Thanks for listening.
And I'm George Romaka. Thanks for listening indeed, because if a podcast drops and there's no one around to hear it, it's just another collection of ones and zeros that doesn't matter.
And that's exactly what the company wants. To keep you on the line. They'll do anything to keep you on their line. They pit the lifers against the new boys, the old against the young, the black against the white, everybody to keep us in our place. I mean, can't you understand that?
You've been listening to Does This Still Work? Produced by Joe Dixon and George Ramaka. The hosts can be reached via social media, email, or the contact page at dtswpod.com. Be good to yourself and others, because that still works.
No help by you, that's the guy that we know.
I mean,
you can just cut that out. That was all scrambled. Just forget it. Forget I said a thing.
So, Joe.
Yes, sir.
You got deep-throated by something. What was it? So, Joe, when you chose to major in film, what did you imagine you'd be doing with that? I know you want to find a partner to settle down with, but what are the best things about living alone?
George, how do you handle it if you see a doctor or dentist who turns out to be MAGA?
Do you like it when a partner pinches your nipples?
If you went to the movie business, would you want to be a writer, director, or an actor?